All right, welcome everyone. My name is Ian Scarfe. I'm the director of the Trinity Alps Chamber Music Festival, and today's program is kind of a celebration of the Trinity Alps Chamber Music Festival. Let me describe how this concert's going to work. We're going to start with some music. I'm going to play the piano, and then I'm going to introduce you to my friend and colleague, Sam Reider. Sam is a wonderful pianist himself. He also plays the accordion, and he is a composer, as I mentioned. He was also the composer in residence at the Trinity Alps Chamber Music Festival last summer in 2023. And part of that journey was that he became immersed with the rest of the musicians in our residency in the beautiful wilderness areas around Trinity County and other Northern California locations. He also went on tour with us. He played some music, he played the piano, he played the accordion, he made arrangements. It was really fun. He was totally plugged into the rest of the musicians on the music festival. So we'll talk a little bit about that experience, and then we will share a piece of music that Sam wrote for all of us. He wrote this to be played at the 2024 Chamber Music Festival. The performance has already come and gone. It was in April here in San Francisco, and it involved 14 different musicians. It was quite a juggling act, coordinating all of that. And what we did is we made a recording of that. And so at 7:15 p.m., we are going to pause this Zoom meeting, and I'm going to send you a YouTube link. And then you're going to click on that YouTube link, because at 7:15, that recording will start rolling. It's about a 25-minute piece, and you'll just enjoy the glories of YouTube. You know how it goes. But before we get there, let me play some music for you. And let me tell you a little bit about the program, because all of the music we're going to do today is American music. Sam's piece, of course, is American. Sam lives here in California. He wrote the piece inspired by his trip to Northern California. Before we get there, though, I'm going to play some music by the composer Samuel Barber. Now, Samuel Barber was an American composer, and he wrote this next little collection of pieces in 1944. These are a group of pieces he called Excursions for the piano. And these are pieces I've played a lot over the years, but it's always nice to revisit them because they're a perfect example of when a classical composer finds inspiration from traditional American music. So in his little description of these pieces that he called Excursions, he wrote a little paragraph that says, "These pieces are excursions into the American countryside, where Mr. Barber took his inspiration not only from the landscapes and sort of the act of traveling through, the landscapes of America, but also each one of these excursions draws on a different kind of popular music, and he sort of integrates it into his otherwise classical piano style." So he wrote these in 1944, so adjust your expectations about popular music to the 1940s. And take a listen. Here's the first one. The first one of these excursions is a little bit jazzy, has a little bit of a kind of a boogie, especially in my left hand. The left hand really generates all the energy. Just listen to this little pattern. It's going to keep moving and pushing us through the music, and it has that kind of energy. It reminds me a little bit of, since I talked about the introduction about traveling, it reminds me a little bit of the act of travel, and perhaps being in a car, or even better, being in a train. There are several moments in this music where you can hear different sounds of being on a train. There are chords that imitate the train whistle, the whistle of a train. And then there are these moments where you can hear the what do you call the at crosswalks, the train crossing where it goes ding 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 ding. What do you call that thing? I forget. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. You'll hear that in the music. You'll hear this kind of this wonderful energetic music, especially coming from my left hand. And best of all, you're going to be able to watch it from a bird's eye camera as I change this to my iPhone up above. So I hope you enjoy. This is number one, the first of Samuel Barber's Excursions. All right. Thank you very much. Again, that's music of Samuel Barber. That was the first of his excursions. I'm curious, how, how did you find that? How did you enjoy that? Were there any images that came to your minds? You can type it in the chat, or if you dare, you can unmute yourself and say hi. Something about the way that it's like the energy never stops. It's like once that pattern gets going, it just keeps going and going and going, you know. And that's why at the end, when it suddenly disappears, it's like such a funny moment. Anyway, that was the first of Samuel Barber's excursions for the piano. Like I was saying earlier, this is kind of the theme of today's program, is music that takes American, you know, traditional music or popular music and sort of folds it into what we think of as classical instrumental music. That was a fun example. I see, for example, Pam did say that she felt like she was on a train. I wonder how much of that was in the music and how much of that was because I kind of suggested it and made you think of it a little bit. But yeah, the train whistle chords are there, the kind of that kind of funny rhythm. You know, sometimes I think about all kinds of things when I play. I don't need to go on and on. I'm going to play one more of these. This is another one of these excursions by Samuel Barber. The second one is much slower. I see that my friend Alder, who is watching, said that it was cool that I went slow and fast at different times. Well, this one is mostly just slow, and you know that from the very beginning, because when I open up the music for the second one of these excursions, Barber gives me an instruction. He says, play this in a slow blues style. So I have to sort of think about putting myself back in the 1940s or 1930s and thinking about that old kind of blues music and getting myself in the mood. And so I hope you enjoy. This is the second of Samuel Barber's excursions, the slow blues. All right. That was the second. That was the second of these pieces that Barber calls excursions. Again, borrowing from American popular genres. Most of, by the way, a little bit about Samuel Barber. He wrote these in 1944. He lived throughout the 20th century, or at least those middle kind of decades of the 20th century. And to be honest, most of Samuel Barber's music is very classical. Classical, or, perhaps it has a kind of romantic, melodic and passionate kind of quality to it. It's a little bit modern. He was writing in an era when there was a lot of real modernist music. But Barber's music is not too edgy. It's not that modern. It has this real romantic soul to it. I think of his most famous pieces like his Violin Concerto or the Adagio for Strings. These are his most popular pieces, and they have a romantic soul to them, I would say. So this piano piece, these excursions, is kind of a rare example of him borrowing from American music. He wrote these in 1944, and sometimes I just think, 1944 was such a dramatic time to be alive anywhere in the world, I mean, it must have just seemed like the world was ending, no matter where you were. I mean, and I think maybe Samuel Barber's turning to American music in that intense time, was just a kind of a reflection on, well, I can't put words in his mind, but it's just an interesting thing to think about, when this music comes from and what was going on in the world around him, because, no artist or musician or composer is really immune to the world around them. We're all trying to respond in some way. Anyway, I'm going to play one more of these. This third one is probably my favorite of the whole set. The third of these excursions it takes the form of a little theme and variations. And a theme and variations, that's a very classical idea. That's a very old idea. It goes all the way back to Schubert and Beethoven, and even Bach wrote theme and variation. And the idea is pretty straightforward. You start with an easy theme, easy in the sense that it's melodic, it's not too complicated, it lodges in your ear pretty nicely. And then, by repeating it in a kind of improvisatory way, you can create variations. And usually, these variations, they really reflect the composer. So, for example, Beethoven, when he wrote his variations, there's often a kind of a real build and a dramatic, kind of passionate, fist-shaking drama that erupts, very Beethoven. Bach's variations are full of counterpoint and canons and fugues and so on. This one by Barber is a very interesting one. And to explain it, first of all, I'm going to give you a little context, and I'm just going to play the theme for you. So this is the theme that he uses for this little set of variations. It's a sweet little tune. It reminds me a lot of an old cowboy ballad called The Streets of Laredo. In fact, that whole last part where it's coming down, that's almost exactly the same as The Streets of Laredo. And so the way Barber creates a little set of variations on this old kind of casual, beautiful cowboy ballad is he mainly does so through the rhythm of the piece. And this is tricky, so I'm going to try to explain it. In short, he asks me to play most of the time with my two hands at slightly different speeds. And that's not easy. Slightly different speeds is very tricky. Just listen to what I mean. First, I'll play for you my left hand. This is the easy part. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 notes per bar. That's a pretty even pattern. That's very common. That's in a lot of music. While I'm doing 8 notes per bar in my left hand, my right hand has to do 7 notes per bar, which is just a little bit slower. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And to put it bluntly, playing those two different rhythms at the same time is just incredibly it like hurt my brain. When I was trying to learn this, I couldn't do that. You know, it was like my brain could not do both of those. It could do one and then it could do the other. And sometimes I could do it really slowly, but it took me really quite a while of working out just to get that feeling of, you know, two slightly different speeds in my two hands. And once you get it, it's wonderful. It has this kind of luxurious kind of floating quality to it. You know, it's like the music never quite you know, it doesn't really fit together, so they're just kind of floating around each other. And it really goes with that kind of easygoing cowboy ballad. It just kind of floats along, you know. Now, like I said, this is a theme and variations. So that's just the first line of music. After that, he starts doing variations. So the whole 7 against 8 thing, that's just the beginning. Later on, it becomes 7 against 9. And then there's like a little skipping rhythm against 9, and that turns into a 4 plus 4 over 5 plus 5, and then those turn into triplets over groups of 10. Anyway, you get the idea. It just keeps changing and morphing, and yet it never breaks its mood. It's kind of casual, sing-songy mood, and that's a wonderful thing because, you know, if I hadn't said anything, this music would probably just wash right over you, and it's beautiful, and you think, ah, what a nice, pretty piece. You know, but I want you to know how hard I worked just to get this. So, near the end, there's one variation where you can hear my hands come together, and they're playing these chords, and they sound kind of like bells in the distance, ringing church bells or something. And every time I get there, I think like, hallelujah, I made it. I made it through the toughness, and now it's all together again. So I hope you enjoy this. This is the third of Samuel Barber's Excursions. This one, a little set of variations on the Streets of Laredo.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you very much. I just love those pieces. That's music by Samuel Barber. I've enjoyed playing those. There's actually a fourth one. We're out of time. So I'm not going to play. The fourth one is a hoedown. It's a cowboy dance. So if you want more, tune in later. Um, like I said, we're on a timer here. In 10 minutes at 7:15, a performance will start over on YouTube. I'm going to put the YouTube link in the chat here. And I'm going to ask all of you, go ahead and put that link in to, if you don't mind multitasking a little bit, put that link in to your web browser because it'll bring up the video and at 7:15 it'll be rolling. But before we get there, I want to tell you a little bit about this piece. This is a piece that the Trinity Alps Chamber Music commissioned from composer Sam Reider. And here I'll introduce Sam to you right now. There he is, Sam from his home in Oakland, California. Sam, welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. This piece that you composed, um, the first thing I want to ask you is, I kind of set you up by playing American music that was classical music, but borrowed from American traditional music. So can you tell us a little bit, can we expect the same from your piece?
Yeah, I think there's a sort of pretty extensive tradition of composers of all nationalities writing music that draws from the folk and popular traditions in their countries, right? This is something that was, you know, part of music going all the way back to Bach. And it's no different here in the United States. And the interesting thing about the United States is that we have so many varied and diverse folkloric traditions that represent the contributions of people from all over the world. And I've spent my career um, exploring a lot of those different traditions. I come to this first and foremost from a jazz background. I was trained as a jazz pianist, and I lived in New York for 15 years and played a lot of jazz. And then in college, I discovered for the first time bluegrass music and fiddle music and old time and gospel and country music, and I really fell in love with that. And I spent about a decade playing the accordion and traveling all around the U.S. Working with roots musicians of different sorts. Um, and what I love about that music, I feel like it's really related to chamber music in general because um, a bunch of people sitting around playing violins and guitars and mandolins. It's this collective feeling of rhythm creation, of grooving. That's what it's all about. It's about creating this sort of warm atmosphere, a groove that people want to dance to. That's what drew me to folk music in the first place. And so that sort of like rhythmic quality, the dance-like quality, all of those grooves are things that I bring to my composition, whether I'm writing for a classical ensemble or for a folk band or for a jazz band or for my students. I'm always thinking about, I don't even have to think about it. It's just so much what I love is the rhythm. And those Barber pieces are a perfect example of that because um, even though the harmony that he's using is way more sort of um, kaleidoscopic than the harmony you hear in the blues and in folk music. You hear echoes of bluesy things, but really for
Yeah.
me, what feels sort of like quintessentially American about it is the sort of cyclical rhythmic quality to what Ian was doing with his left hand, that type of ostinato. That is like quintessentially American because it's the Afro diasporic traditions of percussion music and rhythm combining with sort of cyclical harmonic forms where you get the blues and you get rock and roll and jazz. That's the history of it all. And what I do is sort of like that in some ways, and I'll be excited for you to hear it.
Yeah, this is amazing. This is like a perfect introduction. I want to ask you one more thing. The piece you wrote is for 14 instruments. So just so everyone knows, there are four violins, there are two violas, two cellos, a double bass, there's a flute, a clarinet, a bassoon, and there's a piano. I'll be there right in the middle on the piano. And then Sam will be there on stage with his accordion. Tell us a little bit about, I mean, we have 6 minutes, so tell us a little bit about what it was like creating music for this ensemble. And then I'm going to ask you one more question about sort of how the piece takes us on a journey to a specific place. So
Yeah.
first, a little bit about the instruments.
Well, this is actually, I think, the largest instrumentation that I've ever written for before. Most of my previous sort of like quote unquote classical compositions were for much smaller chamber ensembles. So I was sort of thinking about this almost like a small orchestra. And it gave me a lot of opportunities to explore different textures between the instruments that I had gotten to do before. One challenge actually is just that the accordion itself is such a big sound. It's truly an orchestra in and of itself in a box. And the piano also really covers the full range of the frequency spectrum of the orchestra. So figuring out how to incorporate those two elements with all the other instruments was partly my challenge. And the way that I chose to do that was I wrote a piece with 8 short movements. They're miniatures, and I sort of featured the character of each of the instruments in each movement, which is a sort of classic, tried and true way of, um, you know, what's the word? Uh, separating labor, giving everybody their
Yeah.
moment to shine.
It's very democratic of you.
Yes.
No, a lot of composers do that, where different movements feature different sort of solo instruments.
Yeah.
Also, I should point out to everyone that the instrumentation that we're using is the same instrumentation that Aaron Copland used for his famous ballet Appalachian Spring. And so when we played this back in April, it was a double header. We did Appalachian Spring and then we did Sam's piece, and it worked beautifully because it's the same lineup of strings and winds. And then, there's no accordion in Appalachian Spring, so Sam just joined us for his piece. But Appalachian Spring, for those of you who know the music of Aaron Copland, he's another great American composer who really embraced the sound of Americana. And he creates several sort of folksy, rustic dance tunes, and they're separated by beautiful atmospheric music. And then at the end, he also quotes a famous American song. It's the old Shaker hymn, "Simple Gifts." So at the end of Appalachian Spring, you hear "Simple Gifts," and it's kind of like what Samuel Barber did here, and it's kind of like what you do, Sam, too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sam, tell us a little bit about the title Hyampom, which relates very much to what we do with the Trinity Alps Chamber Music Festival. And in 2 minutes and 30 seconds, give us a play-by-play of how this is going to unwind this
I'll do my
performance.
best. I'll do my best. So Hyampom is not only the town that the Trinity Alps Chamber Music Festival takes place in, but it's also the town in which my grandmother lived for 30 years. And she had a farm, about 150 acres, in Hyampom, and I used to go up there every summer as a kid. And it had a pretty profound impact on my life and my connection with California and the land and just sort of being in nature. And it's had a big impact on my artistic life also. I've made many pieces of artwork about my experiences up there, and this was the perfect opportunity because there was the connection between the ensemble and the place and the experience that I got to have going back up there last year. It was my first time returning to Hyampom in 20 years, and this piece I wrote is about that feeling of the sort of strange, almost uncanny feeling of nostalgia. Um, the feeling of coming back to a place that you haven't been in a long time, and the sort of like angular and strange rub that between your memories of the place and how it is in the present moment. The whole piece is built around the bird call of the mourning dove, which is that will begin and end the composition, and you'll hear a series of 8 short vignettes that are my memories of my time and at my grandmother's farm. It'll start with the dawn. I'm lying in bed listening to the world come to life around me. And then there's a fast, fun movement of me chasing the chickens in the chicken coop. My job was to go collect the eggs every morning. And then we have a scene of being in her garden, which is sort of combined with a memory of when she shot a rattlesnake in the garden with a shotgun. And following that will be a painting of the Trinity River at noon, and then a very bright, lively, fun sort of dance movement, painting a picture of the dragonflies flying and darting above the surface of the lake of her pond. and finally a final movement of 4th of July, where you're going to hear Woody Guthrie's "This Land Is Your Land," also in a theme and variation style. That was one of
All
her
right.
favorite songs.
And with that, everyone, it's time. I'm going to ask you, find the link, go to YouTube, and go over to the link that is sent, and you will be enjoying this. And it's about to start. If you need any help, if you get it, then you can go ahead and log off of Zoom. We're going to come back after the performance, and so you can log back on and hear a little bit more from Sam. If you have any trouble getting over to YouTube, let me know, and I can try to help. Here we go. Oh, this is just the countdown. I get it. Well, let me turn that down a little. So, okay, so YouTube has a countdown of about a minute. So if you go over to YouTube, you probably can see that. I did not make the countdown music. I have nothing to do with that. You can blame Google if you find it to be cheesy. Is everyone doing okay? Thumbs up? Okay. Well, feel free to hang out on the Zoom. You can also turn off the Zoom if it saves your computer. But after this performance, it's about 22 or 25 minutes of music. We'll come back onto the Zoom and we'll chat a little bit with Sam about his piece. So I hope you enjoy this. Wow. That was great. Watching that from start to finish again. That was great. Congratulations, Sam.
Thanks. Yeah, it was really fun to hear it after taking a break from it for what's been like 2 months now since we did that, right?
It's been like 2 months, yeah.
Yeah, it was great to hear it. So much fun.
Um, Also, one of the advantages about, when I don't have to play is my cat comes and sits in my lap.
Right.
So Monkey was enjoying the music too, right? Right, Monkey? You want to say hi? Say hi. It wouldn't be a Zoom call if someone didn't show their. I mean, we saw Sam's dog make an appearance earlier, so.
Still back there.
I would love to hear from our audience who just heard that from the first time. I see there's some things coming up in the chat, but does anyone who's unmuted want to say anything? Pam, are you there?
I am. That was wonderful. Uh, there's some background music. I don't know what that is. Um,
Well, make sure you turn off your YouTube.
yeah.
Your
Oh,
your YouTube might keep going. You know how YouTube likes to show you ads. Luckily, we had no ads. We just had that funny countdown music, which was like totally out of character.
It was really funny.
It's like, doesn't Google have like AI that can make better background music?
Mhm.
Does anyone have any questions? I see maybe some questions in the chat, but if Emily or Aaron, if you and Alder want to unmute, you can say hi and ask some questions of since we have a composer in the same room as us right now.
Alder's questions are pretty much geared around the snake, so we can save them until we see Sam and Hyampom.
Yeah.
You know,
After my grandma killed the snake, we barbecued it for 4th of July.
was it good?
I don't think I remember not liking it very much.
Oh my God. I remember when Sam was writing this piece, he was describing to me the moment when the rattlesnake appeared. And we were trying to figure out how to make a rattlesnake sound, we were trying all these different things. And then, I have a box of like toy instruments. They're like kid instruments like kazoos and slide whistles and all kinds of things. And I had a tambourine in there and I was like, what about this? So that became the rattlesnake.
Yeah, it was perfect.
I see a question for you. This is from Joyce, who's out on the East Coast. She says, "Where did you study composing, or how did you get into composing?" Sam, you told us earlier that you learned the piano and then you got into jazz piano, but how did you get into composing?
Well, I've been writing my own music for almost as long as I've been playing the piano. Um, and my dad was a composer actually, so I sort of grew up around it. I remember when I was a kid, I would go to sleep at night and he would be sitting at the piano playing the same passage of music over and over and over again and scratching away at his piece of paper. He used to do all of his own engraving by hand with calligraphy pens for his musicians. Um, and so I guess I sort of grew up around that a little bit, but I didn't really think about what I was doing as composing until much later. I was always writing music, songs, songs from my bands, and then I guess in my late 20s, I wanted a new sort of musical challenge, and I decided to start taking some formal composition lessons with a teacher in New York. As I mentioned, I came from a jazz background, but I started studying with this teacher in New York named Ken, who's a expert in early music, Baroque music, and sort of like the classic lineage of counterpoint and harmony that goes back all the way to the time of Bach. And I was a complete beginner at that. I mean, obviously, I'd been a professional musician for my 20 years already, but I hadn't learned about music in that way. And so I kind of went back to basics and started thinking really differently about music and thinking about what I was doing when I wrote music in a new light. And uh, it sort of set me off on this course that um, has informed where I am right now, sitting here today. I mean, during the pandemic, I decided to, since I couldn't perform, I did an online master's degree in composition through San Francisco State, and wrote a bunch of music and continued to study with my teacher Ken in New York, and then yeah, I've just been doing it now ever since. And I've learned some of the best learning I've had as a composer has really been composing music for my students. I'm a professor at a school in the East Bay at St. Mary's College, and I do all of the arrangements for the student chamber ensembles. And when you're writing music for basically for beginner musicians, you have to be really careful about what you do. You can't write stuff that's too hard, which is a challenge for me because I also get to work with lots of amazing, incredible musicians such as Ian and all of those people you saw in the video who are so virtuosic. And I love to push their boundaries. I love to give them challenging things to play. But for me, the learning process has really been kind of like learning how to restrain myself a little bit and compose for students. And that has made me a much, much better composer. So I guess I like to say that I'm still learning to compose, and I'm it's a work in progress.
Yeah, that's good. May it stay that way forever.
Yeah.
I say the same thing about playing the piano. Like as soon as if I ever get to the point where I think I've figured it all out, then what am I going to do? I'm going to quit and do something else.
Exactly. Exactly.
The journey is where it's at. I'm just checking on the chat. I see a couple of comments from Janet and Pam about sort of life on the farm and how nice it is to have that nostalgia. I mean, I grew up on a farm too, so I have my own kind of memories. Um, the chickens, can you explain how you came up with this? Like, how did you get this? Like, where did the chickens come? I mean, how did you do that? I mean, we listened to the clarinets and the bassoon going, "Bagak, bag, 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 bagak," and it makes so much sense. But like, what was your process coming up with the chicken sounds?
Yeah, well, that was a it's a very strong memory that I have of chasing the chickens that would escape from the coop. And that was one of the first sort of memories that I knew that I wanted to put into this piece. And as I mentioned before, the structure that I came up with was to feature one instrument or a couple instruments per movement, and I knew that the clarinet and the bassoon were going to make perfect chicken sounds. Um, and what I also throughout the whole piece, I'm kind of weaving in various melodies from um, folk music, folk songs, and in this particular movement, in the chicken movement, the violins are quoting two traditional American fiddle tunes. One is called "Say Old Man, Can You Play the Fiddle?" and comes from the Texas fiddling tradition, which actually, to bring us full circle, is also a theme and variations tradition. There are these competitions where a solo fiddler will play with a rhythm guitar player or several rhythm guitar players and play a song such as "Say Old Man," and then improvise a set of variations on that theme. And it's this big deal. I have a bunch of friends that are champions in this field of fiddle music. And then there was also I quoted another American Appalachian fiddle tune called Garfield's Blackberry Blossom. And so what I was thinking would be fun, because I felt like the character and the spirit of chickens running around on the farm is so it really fiddle music really pairs so well with that. And so I thought it would be fun to kind of like intersperse the two and have this kind of almost like cartoon dynamic where you hear the chickens squawking and then the fiddle represents me running around trying to catch the chickens, and then that moment where you almost get one and then it gets loose and starts squawking even louder and more dynamically. So that when I'm composing, I'm seeing visual things in my head like that and trying to basically create a story with the music in that way.
Yeah, it's amazing. That's great. Anyone else have any questions or reactions or comments? Emily?
Hi, Ian. Hi,
Hi.
Sam.
Hello.
I'm here in Montclair in Oakland. I
Oh,
don't
wow.
have any questions. I'm so full of just love for this piece. I just cannot get over it. I kind of recorded it on my iPhone so I can listen over and over, and I can also share it with a couple of friends who are very interested. Anyway, I have a sort of an indirect connection with Hyampom because my sister-in-law's husband lived there for many years. He was called Hyampom Tim, and he spent a lot of time playing guitar with other people there. And so I used to hear about Hyampom, though I've never actually been there. My family used to spend a couple of weeks every summer at the Trinity Alps resort, so I'm familiar with the area and just love it. Anyway, Hyampom and your music and all those different movements just has me in a dream state. Thank you very much.
Wow, Hyampom Tim. I did not know that connection was there. That's great.
Yeah, isn't
I'm
that
always amazed when I find people like Emily and like Sam who have a connection to Hyampom because I've been going there for many years and it is at the end of a long mountain road. And, you know, there's no passing through Hyampom. You have to be a very dedicated soul to get there. It is a long and tortuous drive through the mountains. A
Yeah.
long and wonderful and beautiful and a little bit tortuous drive, you know. And so it always amazes me all the people I've met who actually know where it is and have been there. It's because I think everyone has some sort of memory of this. That reminds me, Emily, you don't need to record any of this because the YouTube link that we just watched, it is now going to be up forever. So you can go
I
back and watch it again, and you can copy that link and send it to your friends, and you can tell your friends to just look up, you know, Trinity Alps Hyampom on YouTube, and they can find it and watch it anytime. It's going to live
thought of that and wondered
forever.
that. Thank you very much. That's going to
Yeah.
be better.
Yeah, you're welcome. Also, here, I'll do something else. I'm just going to show everyone. I did this earlier. I was going to show everyone that we are doing concerts in Hyampom. So if you feel like one of the dedicated souls who wants to make a trip to this beautiful part of the world, then you're invited to join us. We have a concert at the end of the month on June 28th. That's a Friday night. If you plan on staying there, maybe look up the local campgrounds. There's not a lot in the way of lodging. There's certainly no hotel. In fact, I can name you all the things there are in Hyampom. There's a post office. What else is there? There's a general store. There's a general store. There used to be a bar, but that closed. Yeah, so there's a post office and a general store. And there's a community hall with a Steinway piano in it. And I'll be playing a concert there on Friday, June 28th. And then I'll be back there with a wonderful group of musicians, you know, later on in the fall. But so if you feel like a dedicated adventurer, maybe come and join us. Anyone else have something for Sam? Oh yeah, a nice farewell note from Aaron and Alder. Thank you for tuning in from Hayfork, California. And Alder, I hope you are still enjoying music as much as you were when I saw you a couple months ago. I think anybody else, does anybody else? Okay, Joyce asks, what's the nearest town to Hyampom? The nearest town is probably Hayfork. Hayfork is about an hour, maybe an hour and a half from the city of Redding. Redding, California would be the city in that area. But like I said, from Redding to Hyampom, it's about 2 hours of windy mountain drives. If you go up that way to visit, you should also consider going up the coast, up to the Humboldt Redwoods. We've done that many times. We have a number of fans and friends in Humboldt County and in the Redwoods. So great. Well, thank you all for joining us. Those of you who are members of my practice room patrons program, you know that I love doing these digital concerts and playing music. So today was a little bit of a sort of a special occasion because we were able to feature Sam and the recording from the Trinity Alps Festival. So what I'm doing is all of the donations and the contributions from this digital concert are going to the music festival so that we can continue to offer programs like this. So I hope you will find a bit of generosity in your spirit after hearing this incredible music and maybe make a contribution. You can do that through my normal website, or you can go to the Trinity Alps Festival website to make a contribution. Also, think about this. One of our patrons and music lovers wanted to sponsor the creation of a new piece of music, and they made a contribution. It was a 4-figure check they wrote. It was a large check, but it was 4 figures. You know, it was some number of thousands of dollars, but that's all it took to create an incredible piece of music. I mean, that is lasting impact. You know, so if that's the kind of thing that you think about, you know, if you think about like, well, you know, I was going to spend $3,000 on a vacation to Hawaii, you could also spend $3,000 commissioning a wonderful piece of chamber music. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked, but I get so excited about this stuff. So thank you all for joining us. Sam, thank you for writing such a great piece and for being a great performer and just a positive character being a part of all of this. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me do it. It's been a pleasure. Nice to meet you all. Thanks for listening to the piece.
Yeah. And keep in touch. You know how to find us. We'll talk to you again soon.
Bye.
Bye.